Coach, I heard you on the teleconference talk about your scheduling priorities when it comes to FCS foes. When it comes to Power 5 teams beyond this year, there aren't any until 2020. As you look to round out your schedule, how do you view scheduling Power 5 conferences?
Well, first and foremost, we want to give ourselves the best chance to continue to develop our program the way we want to be able to do it, right? In terms of this culture, this new program coming in here. But I will say that, with the way that the playoffs have changed, the playoff system has changed, the playoff committee's changed, and what they're valuing, we're going to have to start, if we want to get to that point, we're going to have to start scheduling opponents, bigger opponents, nationally ranked opponents, and we'll get there. And we plan to do that in the future. I have not officially made the schedules yet moving forward. There's a lot of options out there, and that's what John Cunningham, myself, Mark Coyle are going through to put ourselves in positions to schedule people that give us an opportunity to eventually, when we're ready for that, to be put in that type of bracket. But with the 9 conference games, that does it alone because we play in one of the strongest conferences in the country. The 3 other games, it's going to be hard in the Big Ten to be able to schedule the FCS opponents moving forward. But if we have to do that moving forward to get ourselves to a point where we need to be, then we will. But it's going to be very hard to be able to have them on your schedule and then still be able to have the weight of schedule matter a lot to the playoff committee if you get to that point.
Do you see maybe talking or pushing back a little bit on these conflicts going forward with the Vikings, PJ, and on the opening games? Playing the same time, and sometimes, they're a mile or whatever it is between the 2 stadiums.
Yeah, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Is the tale of 2 cities, right? In terms of there is a lot to do here, which is our advantage. We are a major sports city with a ton to do. But there are instances at times where there's a Vikings game on Thursday night, which there was. There was a Twins game that night as well. The State Fair was going on. I think the State Fair was the bigger issue, right? There's 2 million people that go through there, 3 million people, whatever it is. But when you talk about that's what also makes it a lot of fun to go to school here, is that type of experience. Of course, you don't want to be able to schedule those on that day. Or if you do, let's do it throughout the day. So the Minnesota fans can go to all 3 and then top it all with fireworks at the fair. We should do it that way. But again, it's one of those things you have to deal with when you're in a major sports town. And I think that's more of an advantage than anything else.
Did you learn anything about your...
Oh, go ahead.
Do you prepare a little bit differently with the players now? You got a 2-hour time difference. You go west. You got a game that starts at 9 o'clock your time. You kind of players sitting around maybe a little bit during the day on Saturday. Just generally, can you talk a little bit about how you approach that?
Yeah, we were able to, with the schedule we had in training camp, you can do it however you want. So we practiced on game day, simulated game day time leading up to the first game against Buffalo. We were able to do that a whole week and a half, 2 weeks out, right, to get their bodies acclimated to that time. When you start school, it's different because now all the classes are set. We practice in the mornings. They have classes in the afternoon. We're going to practice in the morning all week, but as we get closer to game time, right, it's not necessarily when you practice, it's when you get up and when you go to bed. And when you make the West Coast trip, the ability to get in and get out, that's key. There's an elevation change. There's the 3.5-hour difference. There's all these quote-unquote excuses, circumstances, different things that you have that we want to prepare them for. So we will adjust the timesheets of when to go to bed, especially the night prior to when they play, where it's not going to make the most significant difference until the second night, which would already be home by then, in terms of when the body will start to adapt to that. But we should be in and out before it ever has any effect on our body. We're doing a lot of things in preparation for our game, going all the way out west in terms of hydration, nutrition. It's 105 degrees, I think, in Corvallis right now, or on the West Coast. There's a lot of smoke in the air. I've gotten that type of messages in terms of the wildfires. But those are all things that we can't let affect us. And we, as a coaching staff and as a program, have to be able to prepare our players to be able to be their best at those times, and we will. There's a lot of factors from Eugene's airport not being open in the runway to flying into Portland to traveling farther, no police escort to rush hour traffic to 2-hour rides to those are all things when you go on the road. So what? But I wanted our players to know that ahead of time, that no circumstance will dictate our behavior. We will prepare for the circumstances and how the culture demands our behavior will be.
What did you learn from your team, or anything you learned that you
Yeah.
expect going in?
No, I don't know if it's what I expected, didn't expect. We're in process. We're changing. We're growing. We're failing. I think those are the kind of words that come to mind. This is a very inexperienced, youthful football team that people are gaining valuable knowledge with every single snap. And that's critical, especially at the quarterback position and a lot of other key roles. I think you saw a lot of freshmen out there, or sophomores, in terms of when they were making plays over the microphone. We talked about, Ty Johnson, 141 yards. He matched his career total, right, in one game. And now he's the guy instead of just a role player. But what I loved about him was they found a way to win. They were able to respond after a lot of adversity, missed 2 field goals from a kicker that usually doesn't miss much. We were able to recover after an interception in the end zone. So I was really pleased with how the game flowed. Maybe not necessarily in terms of, scoring a ton of points, but how it flowed, how the quarterbacks and how the players managed the game, how they responded to adversity. And remember, the difference between really elite teams and average teams is that much. It's the 3rd and 4s, right, that become 3rd and 1s. You're winning more on 1st and 2nd down, right, to shorten those 3rd. And we had a lot of 3s and 4s on 3rd down, which is difficult. That's right in between the run and the pass. And when you have an experience in a lot of positions and it's maybe a little too far to be able to run it, then you've got to be able to execute at a higher level. And we weren't able to do that. So that's something we've got to get better at and continue to grow. But what I saw was, especially from today, I learned a lot about our team today. We practiced Saturday and Sunday on a very individual, fundamental basis. But then today, coming out to practice, first morning practice, first day of school, all these excuses of why coaches usually say, oh, this isn't going to be a very good day of practice. The first day of school usually isn't. These guys had their best day of practice today. So that's what I was really pleased with. I found out a lot about our team, of how they felt they played and how they wanted to respond, because the result's the result. That's data. Whether that's a W or an L, how you played is how you played. That's what we have to fix. So a result will not dictate how we practice, how we coach them. We have to get better in every area, and we've got to get better now. And that was the whole message today.
How about the run game? I mean, did you see that as a work in progress? You got to be more physical. Was there anything that stood out to you?
Well, I thought a lot of inexperience stood out to me a little bit, in terms of, Jared hasn't even practiced with the football team until training camp was when he was finally cleared. Now, being cleared means you can start doing stuff. And he didn't even lift all offseason, right? You've got a redshirt freshman up there. You've got guys that played maybe a little bit. You've got a guy Garrison, who just started playing in a game, didn't even practice all training camp playing. So I thought I saw a little bit of inexperience come out in that. We were very, very basic, everybody. I mean, we ran inside zone, 31 times. I'm sure for you, you're like, this is what they have. But again, we wanted to put ourselves in the best position to be successful, give the quarterbacks that were starting for the very first time true starts, the ability to run the offense at a very high level. And I thought that was a mission accomplished. We didn't have a lot of 12 men on the field, miscommunication of personnel. We didn't have a lot of missed assignments. Now we got to get lower pad level. We got to drive people out of hole. We got to stay on blocks and sustain blocks longer. We got to communicate better. Again, that offensive line's about a holistic approach, one message, one delivery. It all works in sync. And sometimes we were out of sync, but there wasn't a lot of missed assignments. And that was the whole goal coming out of game one. And you wanted to win, but you wanted to make sure you could give yourself the best chance to win. And I thought we were able to do that. As we continue to go, we'll expand. Whatever the team can handle, we'll give them. But that would be foolish for me to say, here's everything. We haven't really had you practice much, especially at the key positions. And you've been here 3.5 weeks of true practice, and here you go. Here's the whole thing. So that's what we have to, again, even when we talked about the evaluating, developing, mastering, that has now shifted into the season too.
Graded out well? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I thought we graded out well. I thought what we didn't grade out well was like the finishing parts of things, sustaining things. That's where how we played. It wasn't necessarily what the call was or what my job was. It was how I did it. That was how the grades kind of came out, in my opinion, of how we have to get better. That's why Saturday and Sunday we worked more on the fundamentals of how we execute that, how we execute that particular block, or how we execute that particular route or that particular concept.
How important is the experience on that offensive line of Donnell Green?
Of Donnell? I think it's really important, but it's not like he's a 4-year starter here in the same system. He's had different systems. And everybody, this is year 1 for the system, right? This isn't year 4 for Donnell, right? So he's got to continue to grow. I think he's grown tremendously since January, not only just as a football player, but as a man. But Donnell's got a long way to go. He's got a long way to go. And I think that's what he would want to hear from me, and he has heard from me, is I'm always going to find, I was going to tell and show Donnell where he can be, not where he is. And I think that's hard for some people here to get used to as well. You're constantly coaching forward, right? And that's different for some.
PJ, a couple questions if you don't mind.
Oh,
First,
please.
How have you balanced drumming up enthusiasm with managing expectations? And the other question is, with 2 quarterbacks at the top of your depth chart, has there been any tendency to think maybe you play the younger guys if you have something you haven't for long?
Yeah, the thing about expectations is I think everybody else can create expectations of our program. Look at game 1 across the country. I mean, if you didn't think expectations were high among the country, but I think that you kind of find out where everything is, right? And for us, nobody's going to put more expectation and more pressure on this football team than myself. But I also know more than everybody else of exactly where this program is, exactly what type of depth we have, what type of talent we have, what type of experience we have. And I don't think that's hard to figure out. But it's my job to get the most out of that every single day. This is a new culture, completely different. And we can talk about 6 head coaches in 11 years, talk about all those things we've talked about all offseason. But really, when it comes down to it, this is kind of like a year 0 with a new culture that's different from other years, different from other systems. This isn't an extension of what we did last year. And I was brought in to run that culture, that program, that system. Sometimes that's the case when you're expected to do something. When somebody retires and they go down with 10-9 wins and they've been recruiting at that level for so long, and it's one of the traditional powerhouses, and then you're supposed to be that guy squared. I was hired here to be myself, bring the culture that we know here. And if you look at my background from high school, Canelan High School, right, to Northern Illinois, to the San Francisco 49ers, to Rutgers, to Western Michigan, what do they all have in common? We're going to do what it takes to build the solid foundation of this culture, to build it into a championship culture in the future, which hasn't happened here in 50 years. So whatever that takes. And so that's my expectation of myself. Everybody else is going to have this W or loss expectation of our program. That's for everybody else and for all of you to talk about and talk about me. But just so everybody knows where I am, I'm hired to make sure that I get to a certain spot sometime. I don't know when that is, but I only know a certain way of doing it. And that is making sure the culture is absolutely the first thing that we do, we talk about, we evaluate, period. Nothing comes above that. No win, no loss, no quote-unquote result or data comes above the culture being established. And that's what we've been doing for 7-8 months and will continue to do. But again, when we're ready for that, I don't know when that'll happen in terms of that championship type team or that championship type culture or whatever it is when that actually happens. But that is how I manage, if you ask a question, that's how I manage my own expectations. I have a process of doing things. I've laid that very clearly out to people that hire me. Remember, I did not hire myself. I laid that very clearly out before I was hired. This is a certain way I do things. My staff does things. Our culture does these things. It's very clear. And if you don't want this, do not hire me because this is what I know and this is what type of jobs I like to take. So that's to be able to do that. But to think this is an extension off of a different year, that's not how this is at all. So that's how I answer that question. So I'm not very smart. So the second one was, quarterbacks, yep.
Would you ever lean toward the younger guys?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's just leaning towards a younger guy. I want to lean towards a guy that demands and takes over the entire football program. And that's what I want to be able to see. And I've told both quarterbacks that. That's nothing against them. They're both figuring out how to do that. When you have a lack of experience and lack of playing and lack of results, right, that's very hard to be able to walk in terms of saying, hey, guys, you can believe me, you can trust me. I'm the guy to lead this team. That's very difficult to do. And So what I'm looking for is guys to be able to grab a hold and say, this is going to be my offense. And again, when you kind of look at the stats and you look at things, you look at the result, they're pretty close again, right? And that's where I want somebody to make that big, giant leap. And if they don't make the big, giant leap, that's okay. But sooner or later, I'd like to be able to focus in on one. And I don't know when that time frame is, but if I get forced into a hand of saying, okay, well, we both haven't set ourselves, then I'll pick one. Whichever one that is, I'll pick one which I think will be the best decision moving forward for the entire football team, whatever that is. But I am proud of the quarterbacks of how they managed the game, how they led the game, how they ran the offense. We had some critical decision errors, but you're always going to have those. The biggest thing is I was really happy with how the quarterbacks responded to those errors that I don't remember much of January, February, March, to be honest with you. That was kind of a crazy time and a transition. We were all going through a lot as a program, me trying to get everybody connected, get everybody in the boat, and dealing with a lot of people who are on the fence. I think the biggest thing is go through and see what I'm like, right? Find out as much information as you possibly can. Is this who you want your son to be around? And if it isn't, I understand. After you've done your homework and you haven't just reacted, all right, to what had happened here before, then if it isn't still what you think you'd want for your son, then don't be here. Because I don't want to sell somebody on something that's not true. And that's one thing that we can always say with us is what you see is what you get every single day. So we're not hard to figure out. And if this is what you want for your son, keep him here. And I'll prove to you, right, I will prove to you that that was the best decision. Right? Not because you picked me and I have to prove just to you, but I'll prove that I am who I say I am. And that's real. That was really the talk with many of these players. He was not the only one. There were many players that have that. And remember, we go back to the youth and inexperience of this football team, but there was also, 5 other guys that played a lot of football. They aren't here because of instances, right? And then you talk about other guys who ended up leaving. And then you graduate a lot of those seniors. And you go through those things, those are times that connect you. Stephen Richardson, even after the spring, he's very open about that. It wasn't exactly an easy decision for him to stay here. In terms of just going through, is this what Stephen's personality and my personality couldn't be more opposite. But at the core of it all, I want to make him the most elite man he wants to be, and he wants to be the most elite man he can be. And I think he finally saw that over a course of a period of time. But most of the time, if people just see me, they're just like, I don't fit that. They'll never give you a shot. That's what I always ask people. Just give me a shot to show you that even though you might not be like me, let me show you how I can work in your life and how the staff can work in your life and how our culture can work in your life every day.
You watched tape and knew what kind of player he was from like your freshman year ago, Antoine?
Oh, absolutely. He's a special player. You knew that just because of his bloodline, right? But when you watch that's again, when you talk about how you play, that is how I want everybody on this football team to play. All 22 guys that are on that field need to play how Antoine Winfield plays. That's how they have to, junior. So if that's not how they can play, eventually they're not going to be able to play here. But he's a great example that as you start to see how we recruit and how we develop this program, that's what they're all going to look like, all 22. And they have to get to where we want to go.
One or two more?
PJ, with the 2 quarterbacks, is there a challenge offensively for the other guys in there to adjust to whether it's different personalities between the 2 or just leadership qualities, how they run things, or how do you try to have them be as, I guess, symmetrical as they can without being
That's a great question. I'll be honest, that's a great question. If there was a difference, it would make my decision way easier, and I probably would have already made it. To be honest with you, I mean, if it was that, if that was an issue where the players responded more to one than the other, then I probably would have already made that decision by now, But I think that there's so many guys that haven't played. They're worrying about them making the right decision. They're worried about their responsibility. They're worrying about them, to make sure they do all the right things, let alone which one makes me better, And I think this team has to realize it doesn't matter who plays quarterback. We all have to make each other better, and we all have to help each other out. And that's very tough for people that haven't done a lot.
Talk a lot about culture. What is the biggest change? What's the in culture that you've brought since you've come here to this?
Well, I don't know the difference. I wasn't here prior, right? But I do know that we are who we are. For us, our culture specifically. Again, I cannot talk for past cultures, but.
How do you describe that?
Well, it's called the hyperculture. I mean, go figure. But it's HYPRR. It starts with the people. The people matter. Holistically, academically, athletically, socially, spiritually. I might get fired one day. I might stay here a long time. But it's all about people, right? So it's my job to make them better students, better people off the field, better husbands, better fathers one day. I'm an educator. I'm a teacher. That is why I'm here. I'm not here just because I just love football. Right? Remember, before that, I was teaching 6th grade social studies, right? So that is my job. Then there's a vision. I have a huge vision for this place. I wouldn't have come here if the vision wasn't exactly what I envisioned Minnesota to become one day. And I wouldn't come here if it had done it in the last 5 to 10 years. That doesn't interest me. I like the real hard ones, the ones that haven't happened in a very long time. But I also want people and recruit people and bring in coaching staff members who want to see that happen, who believe it can happen, not all the reasons why we can't do it or who hasn't done it or why we haven't done it. I want to know why we can do it and how can we do it. Yes, that's the harder way to look at because that's the longer road and the tougher journey, but that's what I'm about. That's like my high school won back-to-back state championships when we were juniors and seniors, and we hadn't won anything prior to that. Northern Illinois became on the longest losing streak in the country. We ended up being 10-2 our senior year, right? Rutgers being able to help Greg Schiano build that turnaround, sustain it, do all those things. See the highs, see the lows, right? And then Western Michigan hadn't won a championship since '88 and then outright in '66. That's what drives me, guys. And ladies, that is what fuels me. And that's what we want to bring here. That's the people that want to make a legendary difference. That's our culture. And then you got the P and you got the process, right? And that's the work. People that know who they are, what they want to do, where they want to go, why they want to do it, how they want to do it, and when they want to do it. Those are the people that fit. And they love to work. Mature people, when doing what you have to do becomes doing what you want to do, I want mature people that love the process. Because this is not going to be easy. I mean, this is not easy. But that's okay. I'm not going to sit here and talk about, having the magic wand of things. I know the magic wand is work, the process, going through all the crud, the mud, the dirty water. I know all that. And I've done that my entire life. And then I want people that look at results as just data. I want our players, yeah, we won. So what? Let's come back in here and realize how we played. Forget the result. How did we play and how can we grow and get better? And then people with the last R is response. I want people with incredible responses. No matter what happens in your life, your oar stays in the water. Row the boat's not exactly for the best times. Row the boat's invented for all the bad times. When I was at Western Michigan, year 1, we went 1-11. And everybody's like, oh, row the boat out. Row the boat didn't work. Well, that's the time we had to row the boat. That was when everybody should have grabbed an oar. When nobody else would, that's how you get to somewhere legendary. And that's not really an easy human characteristic to do. When things are tough, grab an oar and put it back in the water. It's easy to put it back in the boat and say, I'm going to stop. So you asked our culture. Sorry. One more? There was one more? Sorry about that. I'm really sorry to you. You and I'm taking you out to, Heather and I are taking you out to dinner at some point.
The defense, we talk a lot about the offense, we focus on, didn't run the football as well. But did the defense impress you the way the adjustments that they made the other day, and was that what you expected? Was that right on point and on sync?
Well, the part of the reason why you do what you do is if your defense is playing that particular way on for offensive calling, we didn't have to change much. The last thing you want to do is throw a late interception because we just want to chuck it around the yard to see what our guys can do, or a sack fumble. We knew our defense was playing strong enough that we could continue to run the football. And whether we had a ton of success at that 31-time play, we won the field position battle. Every single time number 3 started a drive, he was inside his own 20. Right? Every time we started a drive, for the most part, we were close to our own 40, crossing over into midfield eventually. So it's, especially in a first game with new players who are playing a lot, you want to put them in the best position to be successful, and that's what we were able to do. But I'm proud of our defense. I thought our defensive scheme, I thought our defensive plan, I thought the coaches, I thought the players executed beautifully. The only thing I'll say is I didn't think we were good enough and stout enough up front. I didn't think we played hard enough. I didn't think we finished hard enough. And I don't think we took advantage of all the opportunities that came our way. We talk about catch the ones they throw us. We dropped 2 that we should have had 2 more interceptions. Well, those are all the coulda, woulda, shouldas, right? That's why we keep that chart right there. And that chart to all your right, that shows the turnover margin for everybody in our conference. And if you can tell the teams that won by a long margin, they're already winning. Wisconsin's +2 in the turnover battle. Ohio State's +3, right? And you're talking about people who won by a lot or people that beat a significant team. Maryland's +3. It's a turnover battle. And we dropped 2 and didn't catch 2. Though, remember I said the difference between really good and elite teams are this much? On the defensive side of the ball, it's getting the ball and then getting the takeaways. And if you can do that, you're going to win a lot of games. Remember, the ball is the program. I showed everybody that statistic when I first got here, right? When we were 117th in the country in turnover margin, you're 1-11. When you're number 1 in the country, you're 13-0. It's the number 1 stat in football, and that's why that board's there. That doesn't have a win or a loss by it to rank who's in first in our conference. That has turnover margin. And if you come back in the season, for the most part, it's going to look, the top teams are going to be towards the top and the bottom teams are going to be towards the bottom. And that's how we teach the process here of becoming a champion, not just the result, because there's always things behind the result.
Okay.
There you go. I apologize. I have to work on my talking. See you guys. Row the boat, Sky, Ma.
For
Go
players,
Gophers.
we have Connor Rowe.